Hi everyone, my name is Paul Powers. Today I'd like to share a little bit of time with you and speak about timing in an industry. Now, everyone's obviously heard of the baby boomers. Now, between 1946 and 1964, there were approximately 76 million kids that were born in the United States. Now, why were so many kids born? Well, World War II ends, soldiers come home, hadn't seen their wives for the longest time. What's the first thing on their mind? Well, obviously they're going to have dinner first, but the next thing they do is they make a lot of kids. Well, apparently they were very good at making a lot of kids because they made 76 million kids over an 18-year period in the history of the United States. That was the most amount of children ever born in an 18-year period in the United States. Now, let's say that you and I are able to go back in time, and it's 1946, and you and I know that all these kids are going to come into the system. What kind of products do you think those kids would need? Well, if you think of baby food, what company do you think of? Well, if you said Gerber, then you're absolutely correct. And if you think of baby shampoo, what company do you think of? Well, if you said Johnson & Johnson, you're absolutely correct there also. And when you think of toys, what company do you think of? Well, most people say Mattel. Now, all these companies were established around the same time and became very, very big companies. Why? Because of baby boomers coming into the system. Now you have the 1950s. These kids are now 5 to 7 years old. What are these kids getting ready to attend? Well, 5 to 7-year-olds getting ready to attend school. Except back in the 1950s, they did not anticipate all these kids coming into the school system. So they had to do what? They had to build more schools. So what industry do you think took off back in the 1950s? Obviously, the construction industry took off in the 1950s. A lot of your major construction companies that are around today, very big companies, were established around the 1950s, became very big. Why? Because of the baby boomers moving from one decade into the next. Now you have the 1960s. These kids are around 16 years old. What do they want to do? They want to drive. Except do they want to drive grandma's station wagon, or do they want to drive a sports car? Well, obviously they want to drive a sports car. Does anybody remember what famous car came out in 1964 and a half? Well, if you said Ford Mustang, you're absolutely correct. The auto industry was in a slump back in the 1960s. They came out with the cars like Mustang, they came out with Camaro, they came out with Firebird, targeted toward that 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old audience. The auto industry got a big shot of the arm as a result of putting these cars out on the market. Now you have the 1970s and 80s. These kids are not kids anymore. They're now in their 30s. Wife looks over at her husband. She says, honey, I'm sick and tired of renting. I want to buy a... If you said house, you're absolutely correct. So what industry do you think took off back in the 1970s and 80s? Well, if you said real estate, yes, you are absolutely correct. A lot of your very wealthy people that are around today started off in the real estate industry back in the 1970s and 80s. Now you have the last big wave upon us. The year 2009 to 2029, these kids are now 43 to 64 years old. What do you think they're getting ready to do? They're getting ready to retire. This is the first time in the history of our industry where these people, these baby boomers, need us more than we need them.